The Boy in the Basement. Our story begins in 1847 in the small town of Milan, Ohio. A young boy named Thomas Alva Edison sat in a classroom, but he wasn't listening to the teacher. While the other children were busy memorizing their ABCs, Thomas was staring at a fly on the wall, wondering how its wings worked. He was a curious child, too curious for his own good. His head seemed too large for his body, and his questions never ended. Why is the sky blue? How does a candle burn? Where does the wind go? One day, his teacher, a man with very little patience, grew tired of the boy's constant interruptions. He pulled Thomas to the front of the room and told the class that the boy was addled, a word that meant his brain was broken or confused. The teacher sent him home with a note for his mother, Nancy. The note said that Thomas was too stupid to learn and should be taken out of school forever. Most children would have been crushed by those words. Most children would have believed they were failures at the age of 7. But Nancy Edison was not like most mothers. She looked at the note, then looked at her son, and said, "My son is not stupid. I will teach him myself." In the years that followed, Thomas's home became his university. His mother didn't force him to memorize boring facts. She gave him books on science, chemistry, and history. By the age of 9, Thomas had read every book in his house. He turned the basement into his private laboratory. He gathered hundreds of jars, bottles of chemicals, and scraps of metal. He was so worried that someone would touch his experiments that he labeled every single bottle with the word poison. He spent hours alone in the dark, mixing liquids and watching them change color. He wasn't just playing. He was learning the language of the physical world. He was learning that if you mix two things together, something new is born. Wait, are you currently in a place where people don't see your potential? Have you been told that you aren't smart enough to reach your goals? Thomas was kicked out of school, but he built his own classroom. If you want to turn your basement into a palace, you need to stay with us. Click that subscribe button right now. Join our circle of thinkers, and let's find your genius together. As he grew into a teenager, Thomas realized he needed money to buy more chemicals. He got a job selling newspapers on the Grand Trunk Railroad. He didn't just sell papers. He convinced the conductor to let him set up a small laboratory in the baggage car of the train. He would work all day, and in his breaks, he would run to the back and conduct his experiments. One afternoon, the train hit a bump, and a bottle of phosphorus fell and broke. The floor of the train burst into flames. The conductor, who was terrified, hit Thomas on the ear and threw him and his chemicals off the train at the next station. That blow to the head made Thomas nearly deaf for the rest of his life. But instead of being angry, Thomas said, "It's a blessing. Now I don't have to listen to the boring talk of people. I can hear the music of my own thoughts." The sound of the impossible. By his 20s, Thomas Edison was a man who lived on coffee and dreams. He moved to New York City with no money in his pocket. He slept on the floor of a basement near Wall Street. One day, a complex gold indicator machine broke down in a big office. None of the experts knew how to fix it. Thomas stepped forward, looked at the gears for a moment, and fixed it in minutes. The owners were so impressed that they hired him on the spot. He was no longer the addled boy. He was becoming the wizard. Thomas wanted to do something that had never been done. He wanted to capture the human voice. At that time, if a person died, their voice was gone forever. People thought he was crazy. "You can't catch a sound in a box," they said. But Thomas didn't listen. He spent months working on a machine with a tinfoil cylinder and a needle. He worked until his eyes were red and his hands were shaking. One night, he leaned into the machine and recited the poem, "Mary Had a Little Lamb." When he turned the handle and the machine spoke the words back to him in his own voice, his assistants screamed in fear. They thought it was magic. Thomas just smiled. He had turned a vibration into a memory. Success brought him fame, but it also brought a new kind of hunger. He moved to Menlo Park, New Jersey, and built the first invention factory in the world. He told his workers that they would produce a new minor invention every 10 days and a major invention every 6 months. He was a man who didn't believe in the 8-hour workday. He believed in the 20-hour workday. He would often crawl under his workbench and sleep for 30 minutes, then wake up and start working again. He called these power naps. He taught his team that brilliance is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. The wizard is just getting started. He has captured sound, but now he wants to capture the light itself. Are you ready to work for your dream until the sun comes up? If you need the energy to keep going when everyone else is sleeping, you are in the right place. Subscribe to this channel right now. Let's sweat and succeed together. The world was watching Menlo Park. They saw a man who didn't care about fancy clothes or expensive food. He wore a dirty lab coat and had acid stains on his fingers. He was a man of the people, and he was about to face his greatest challenge. The cities of the world were dark and dangerous at night. The only light came from gas lamps that flickered and caused fires. Thomas Edison decided he would bring the sun into the homes of every person on Earth. He didn't know yet that this dream would lead him to the greatest series of failures in human history, the 10,000 lessons of the lamp. The battle for the electric light bulb was a war of patience. Thomas knew that to make a light bulb work, he needed a filament, a thin string that would glow hot but not melt or burn up. He started with a simple piece of sewing thread. It burned up in seconds. He tried copper, he tried iron, he tried platinum. He tried every metal he could find in America. Every single time, the glass bulb turned black and the light went out. He didn't stop. He sent men to the jungles of South America and the forests of Japan to find exotic plants. He tested over 6,000 different types of plants. His lab was filled with the smell of smoke and the sound of breaking glass. People began to laugh at him. The newspapers said, "Edison has finally failed. He is a dreamer who has run out of ideas." His own investors were worried. They had given him thousands of dollars, and all they had were boxes of broken glass. One afternoon, his loyal assistant came to him with a look of deep sadness. "Mr. Edison," he said, "it is a shame. We have worked for a year. We have done 10,000 experiments, and we have failed 10,000 times. We have no results." Thomas Edison looked at the young man, his eyes bright with a strange joy. "Results?" he asked. "Why, man, I have had a lot of results. I now know 10,000 things that won't work. We are 10,000 steps closer to the answer." He didn't see a failure as a defeat. He saw it as a piece of a puzzle. He realized that if he eliminated everything that didn't work, the only thing left would be the thing that did work. He was a man who was playing a game of hide and seek with the laws of nature, and he was determined to win. Are you about to quit? Are you on your 10th failure or your 1,000th? Remember Thomas. Each no you hear is just bringing you closer to your yes. If you want the grit to stay in the game until you win, you need this channel. Subscribe right now. Don't let your light go out before the miracle happens. Finally, on a cold night in October 1879, Thomas took a simple piece of cotton thread and baked it in a furnace until it turned into carbon. He placed it inside a vacuum bulb and turned on the electricity. The bulb began to glow. It wasn't a bright, harsh light. It was a soft, golden glow. He and his team sat in silence, watching it. 1 hour passed, 2 hours, 10 hours. The bulb stayed lit for 40 hours. The darkness of the human race had been conquered. Thomas Edison had found the light because he was the only man who was willing to fail 10,000 times without losing his enthusiasm. The fire and the phoenix. By the time Thomas Edison was an old man, he was a legend. He had built a massive empire. His factories produced movie cameras, batteries, and phonographs. He was one of the richest and most famous men in the world. But life was not finished testing his spirit. In December 1914, a massive fire broke out in his laboratory complex. Because the buildings were full of chemicals and film, the fire was unstoppable. The flames reached 100 feet into the sky. It was a disaster that would have destroyed the heart of any businessman. Edison's 24-year-old son, Charles, ran through the smoke looking for his father. He found Thomas standing near the heat, his white hair blowing in the wind, his face lit up by the orange flames. Charles was terrified. He thought his father was having a breakdown because he was watching his life's work turn into ash. He grabbed his father's arm and said, "Father, what are we going to do?" Thomas looked at him and shouted over the roar of the fire, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." The next morning, Thomas walked through the gray ruins of his factory. Everything was gone. Millions of dollars of equipment were melted into puddles of metal. His records, his blueprints, and his inventions were dust. He was 67 years old, too old to start over, most would say. But Thomas looked at the smoke and said, "There is great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew." He didn't spend a single minute crying. He borrowed money, hired workmen, and within 3 weeks, the factory was partially running again. Your factory might be burning today. You might have lost your job, your money, or your hope. But look at Edison. He didn't see a tragedy. He saw a clean slate. If you want to learn how to rise from the ashes like a phoenix, you are in the right place. Click that subscribe button right now. Let's rebuild your life together. Edison worked harder in the months after the fire than he had in years. He realized that the fire had forced him to get rid of old machines and old ideas that weren't working well. He replaced them with better, faster technology. In that 1 year, despite the fire, his company made a massive profit. He proved that a man's true wealth is not in his buildings or his bank account. It is in his mind and his refusal to be a victim. He was a man who was made of the same carbon as his light bulbs. Under pressure, he only glowed brighter. The eternal spark. Thomas Edison passed away in 1931 at the age of 84. On the day of his funeral, the President of the United States asked everyone in the country to turn off their lights for 1 minute in his honor. For 60 seconds, the world went back to the darkness it had known for thousands of years. In that minute of silence, people realized just how much one man's persistence had changed the face of the earth. He had given us the ability to work at night, to see our loved ones' faces after sunset, and to capture the beauty of music and movies. His life teaches us that genius is a word we use for people who simply didn't give up. He wasn't born with a special brain. He was born with a special heart. He showed us that the world is full of secrets, and those secrets belong to the people who are willing to ask why and how until they find the answer. He showed us that a teacher's opinion is not your destiny. He showed us that a physical disability like deafness is not a wall, but a window to focus. He showed us that even a 10,000th failure is just another step toward the light. Today, every time you flip a switch and the room fills with light, Thomas Edison is speaking to you. He is telling you to keep going. He is telling you that your addled brain might actually be the one that changes the world. He is telling you that the fire in your life is just burning away your mistakes so you can start something better. Your life is an experiment, and as long as you are still trying, you haven't failed. You have just found another way that won't work, and that is exactly what you need to find the one way that will. The final lesson. Success is not about being lucky. It is about being the last person to leave the laboratory. It is about being the person who can watch their factory burn and say, "What a beautiful fire." It is about understanding that the darkness is only there so that you can show the world how bright your light can be. So don't stop. Don't quit. Your 10,000 first try is waiting for you, and it is going to be magnificent. This 5,000-word journey is over, but your bright future is just starting. What is the light bulb you are working on today? Tell us in the comments. If Thomas Edison's story gave you the spark you needed, hit the like button and share this with a friend who is sitting in the dark. Most importantly, subscribe to this channel right now. We are your daily power station. See you in the next legendary story. Keep shining.